So, Paula, I'm kind of intrigued as to what proportion, if any, of school-aged children who you work with in your capacity as a sort of menstrual educator,
Mhm.
what kind of percentage have even really heard of or aware of endometriosis?
It's a good question. And to be honest, it does vary. It varies between schools, it varies between groups, even when I revisit a school.
Mhm.
But I would say it's probably around 20%.
Okay.
I don't have exact figures. That's just a good guess, but they don't really know about it. They still generally think that, period pain is something that's just part of having a
Mm.
menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to get rid of that idea. And I don't want girls to have a fear around their period. I don't want them to accept pain as part and parcel of periods and the menstrual cycle. In my own journey, I did that and, was diagnosed in my mid-20s with endometriosis after years of excruciating pain that I felt was normal. So I want to create an awareness that period pain that's intense and that interferes with your daily life is not the norm. So that if it's stopping your normal routine from continuing, it's interfering with your daily life. That's not okay. That means something needs to be looked at.
And presumably that's one of the most important things moving forward with research as well, is that younger women would, because of this sort of work, would be
Mhm.
able to identify an issue and have that investigated. Are there any other kind of learnings or misconceptions that you see repeatedly amongst the younger generation that worries you, or maybe just makes you sad when it comes to menstrual health and awareness?
Yeah, despite, what's available out there online, there's a lot more access than there would have been when I was young, let's say, to information. How much of it's accurate? Well, that's another debate altogether, but there is a lot more access. However, the girls that I meet face to face, the education system is still failing them. It focuses on the biology part of the menstrual
Mhm.
cycle. However, doesn't, it's not practical education.
Mm.
It's not body literacy. And that's my passion and my purpose is to give, like you just said, it's to give those girls the language and the tools that I didn't have to be advocates for themselves.
Mm.
You know, um, intense period pain is a sign from our bodies. Our menstrual cycles are like an inbuilt app that gives us notifications. That's how I explain it to the girls. And pain is a notification from any part of our bodies that something is going on. I am always careful to say though that, intense pain caused by your period does not mean you've endometriosis, because I don't want to create this panic of, oh goodness, I get really painful periods, I must have endometriosis. Sometimes it's it's due to our stress levels, it's due to illness, it's due to the products that we're using on our body creating more and more inflammation. So I am always careful to address those things as well.
As a kind of a side note, I'm really intrigued as to whether you've ever been asking the young girls that you work with about the contraceptive pill. And I mention this because when I was a teacher, um, I remember within the context of, PHSE and appropriate conversations, I remember asking, just out of interest, I'm just wondering how many of you guys are on the pill, and a really great conversation unfolded that it was probably about 70% of the girls, and it was not for contraception.
Yeah.
Is that something that's reflected now, or would you say that's disproportionate, or is it just something that we can't really tell?
It's still very prevalent here in Ireland as well that
Mm.
um teenage girls are taking hormonal contraception not for contraceptive purposes. A lot of the time they're told it's to regulate their cycles, and I bust that myth because that's what I was told, and I was a long-term pill user, if you like. So yeah, I ask them. I don't ask them if they're taking hormonal contraception, let's say, but I say, you know, does anybody know how the pill works on your body? What does it actually do? Can anybody explain that to me? Sometimes there might be a girl who is quite tuned in and does understand that it stops, you know, your body's natural cycle, it shuts off your hormones. But mostly they will say, oh, it just stops you getting pregnant. So there's still a lack of education around that. And I always explain, I'm not anti-pill. I think it's wonderful that we have those choices for our bodies. But I'm pro-education and I'm pro-informed choices about your body. So we do have discussions, depending on the age group, around how the pill acts on your body, and, you know, just making that informed decision, and knowing as well that if you notice changes in your personality or your mood, or you feel different when you're taking the pill, that there are many, many other options. So not to just accept, oh, well, I take the pill and this happens to me now. To go back to whoever has prescribed that, because at the end of the day, it is a medication, and ask, can I try a different one? I don't think this one is for me. So it's all about creating that advocacy piece from an earlier age as well.
And this kind of comes back to what we were talking about earlier about the idea of empowerment and taking back power, which I think is like, it's such a cringe phrase now because it's so overused.
I know.
Take back power, which is so sad because, you know, I think for both of us in our own endo journeys found that whatever that means, the taking back of the power, the directing of the direction, the direction of the journey sort of was a vital part in understanding and making progress. And without that part, it's really difficult. And I wonder if you could just speak to the practitioners that are watching this about the need to, you mentioned looking at each client in context of what's going on in their life and why that's so important. And I think that's really fascinating. What would you suggest? Why is that so important that we do that with our clients?
So the approach that I take is person specific, because I know my endometriosis journey was different to yours. Yes, there are similarities, and it's the same with menstrual cycles. There are similarities and there are things that are typical markers of healthy cycles and unhealthy cycles, but everybody's context is different. So I think because I work from a mindful point of view, it's so, so important to have your client create an awareness of their whole life as well, because they may not. A lot of the women that we're dealing with are in, you know, fight or flight mode. And it's to actually get them to look at the wider lens. You know, you're not the problem. Because oftentimes we can think, oh, what am I doing wrong? Why is this happening to me? So taking the focus off, while it is a person-centered approach, take the focus off the client and broaden it out. You know, look at the bigger picture. What's going on in your life? How much time do you take for yourself to do nothing as well? You know, because oftentimes there's lots going on and there is no downtime, actual true downtime. So taking a look at that whole bigger picture, work, personal life, you know, rest, diet, hobbies, all of those things, to create this real awareness of a picture of how you are within your own life, you know. And then it's about asking that client to accept how things are for them, name it, accept it, and really begin to understand perhaps why they're experiencing what they're experiencing within the context of their own life. You
I
know,
think this acceptance piece is amazing. And like we said before, if there was, I asked you if there was one real golden nugget, a piece of advice that you would give to the practitioners that are watching, what would it be? And you mentioned the idea of acceptance, which I think people, practitioners and clients, will really struggle with because of the seriousness of the disease, and because of the way that it impacts our clients' lives. So maybe you could just share with us how we might either foster that acceptance, help our clients to foster that acceptance, or even to seek help to foster that kind of acceptance. Because you said to me that without acceptance we can't move forward, and I think that's incredibly true. So how do we go about thinking about this?
Huge question. So many layers, but I truly believe, to reiterate, that you cannot move forward without accepting things exactly as they are, you know, and that's with compassion. It's not a blame. It's not to say it's my fault, because I think oftentimes we do that, especially as women. And it's really, really important to create the understanding piece first, I think, especially with endometriosis. You know, how can we accept something if we don't understand it as well?
Absolutely.
So it's to create that understanding of what's actually happening inside your body. It's not your fault, but accepting how it makes you feel. That's real. Accepting the physical symptoms, they are real, you know, and giving that validation. The acceptance is validation. So once your client feels validated, they are more likely to be able to soften with that acceptance and begin to understand. And then you can unpick all of the things and put the supports in place to create the change.
Yeah, it feels very much like this kind of, I don't know if it's a triangle or a square, of education, exploration,
Yes.
compassion, and acceptance, maybe. And
Yes.
though that sometimes there is a massive block, and I talk to my practitioners about this all the time, the ones that train with me, if we don't make the right basic relationship and foundation with our clients, especially those with endometriosis, there is a block, and progress is elusive, and it can be quite frustrating for everybody involved. So yeah, thank you for that, because I think that's a really unique way of thinking about it.
Thank you. And what you've said about the block there, you know, oftentimes we're battling our bodies, and that's how it feels. And that's how our client feels. They're constantly having a battle. They're trying to get through their day. Everything is a chore or extra, or you've to push through.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to, you know, stop the fight as such, to the acceptance, the education, the understanding, it alleviates that resistance, that constant pushback that we have when we have endometriosis. And it just allows for that softening and that space to understand, yes, this is how it is. And not to try and battle, because I think that block that you're talking about, that's what I'm sensing. It's that battle that we have all the time.